Hey YouTube, the Pokemon World Championships were on last week, and because this last 2 weeks of GBL are kind of bad, I decided to take this video to go over the teams from the tournament, the top 32 teams I believe I have here, and go over how these teams are put together because there's very common themes throughout all these teams. A little bit of spice here and there, but for the most part, it's the same idea for all 32 teams, and it kind of just shows how stale the Great League is right now. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this Show 6 Pick 3 format, basically I think Carbink was the only Pokemon that was banned, but basically it's an open Great League where you can pick any Pokemon, 1500 CP and less. You pick a team of 6, and you bring that team, that is your team for the tournament, and you get matched up against opponents, and then you get to see their 6 Pokemon, they get to see your 6 Pokemon, and then you get to choose 3 of them, like a GBL matchup. 3 of your 6, they choose 3 of their 6, and then you battle in a set of 3. So the first to two wins the match. I think the championship is actually a set of 5. But ItsAXN won. Shadow Swampert, Metacham, Sableye, sandslash, Shadow, Noctowl, and Lantern was their team. So I'm going to go over the top teams, but basically there's a formula to all these teams, and it shows how stale the Great League is. Okay, so let's start with the championships overall. 85% of teams had Metacham. I see that my camera just keeps freezing. Just ignore the camera and listen to my voice. 85% of teams had Metacham. And you can see on this front screen here, 6 out of the 8 have Metacham, and 1 in place of Metacham has Defense Deoxys, which is just, again, slightly worse because of that full psychic typing. I mean, it beats Metacham, but outside of that, Metacham is just a better one, but it's the same idea, right? A psychic counter user. You will see that each of these top 8 trainers has a steel on the team. 2 of them have, or at least one of them has multiple steals. So ItsAXN has a Sandslash as his steal. Rubik's has Registeel. Daj has a Sandslash. Then we go down to Galarian Stunfisk, Registeel, 2 on this one, G-Fisk and a Sandslash, Registeel and Registeel there as well, right? So basically the format is Fighter in Metacham, Steel to beat the Flyers and stuff in Registeel, a Sandslash, or G-Fisk. You also have your own flyer. Most of these have their own flyer, right? I think actually every single one of them has their own flyer, and it was just dependent on which one they wanted. Noctowl, Altaria, Noctowl, Altaria, Noctowl, Altaria, and Altaria. So there's your flyer on all the teams. You have a water type Pokemon. Some of them have 2, some of them have 1, and the typing changes, right? So we have Axon has Swampert and Lantern. Rubik's has Quagsire and Azumarill. Daj has Azumarill and Lantern. And then we go Lantern, Azumarill on the 4th. Swampert on the 5th. Lantern on the 6th. Lantern on the 7th. Azumarill and Swampert on the 8th. And right now, I've kind of already explained this in some of my videos. Water is basically kind of roaming free right now in this meta, just based on what this meta is, right? You have waters. Some of the only weakness is just pure water is grass and electric. And grass is getting absolutely just nowhere. I think it's going to come back more. I put out a video earlier this week saying Venusaur is underrated, but grass is very, very limited in this meta because there's so much ice, there's so much steel, and there's so much flying. And when you have 3 things that take you out like that, you loosen that. And the other thing that is water's way too is electric. And there's not much electric because the stats of Pokemon Go don't match up with the stats of the main series game. So in the main series games, where electric is usually sort of like the faster move Pokemon, where they get to go first in the battling and stuff like that, and there's other sort of stats that help them that is not just the Pokemon Go stats. Those don't translate over to Pokemon Go, so that's why you're not seeing a lot of electric, because the electric are generally pretty weak in this. You can add on top of the fact that there's a decent amount of ground in this and stuff like that, but it's just generally your stat product is not good. So when there's not much grass and there's not much electric, the the waters are roaming free, which is why you have 1 to 2 on every single team. So you have the flyer, you have the water, you have the steel, you have the Metachamp fighter, and you have your basically counter to psychic. Sableye on team 1, Umbreon on 2 and 3. The fourth team had to run with only 4 or 5 Pokemon because there was a mess up on like the input, I think. So, or else there would be an answer there. The fifth team does not have one. I would say Lickitung is the closest because Lickitung has Lick, which is a ghost type move as your fast move. Not the pure answer, but that's that. 6, I would argue that instead of having the ghost, you would just have double flyer here, right? Altaria and Noctowl. So the owl is a normal typing, which would do okay there. And then Sableye in 7 and 8, right? So these teams are slightly different, but they're very, very similar. And then if we go to like the sort of odd man out here of Pokemon I have not covered, covered all in 3, covered all in 4. Charizard, again, Charizard is more of a flyer than it is a fire, right? It's banking on its wing attack fast move, and then again, wing attack fast move with a broken blast burn charge move, right? So your flyer neutralizes the ground from weakness of Charizard there. You had a double rock weakness, but I mean you're gonna be weak to rock anyways, and you're pretty glassy in the Great League. So again, just the spamminess of Charizard with the blast burn is a good coverage in general there. Plus, it's your sort of fighter answer too, right? If 85% of the team is going to have Metachamp and a Steel, being able to throw wing attacks and against Metachamp and blast burn against Steels is a nice combo there, right? So that's why that on the team. Cover the main there. Lickitung, again, I kind of just covered Lickitung again. Lickitung is just one of the better safe swaps. It's bulky. It covers most of the main meta, right? Because you actually do okay against Metachamp because you are also throwing super effective fast moves in Lick. You're a nice wall to Sableye. All these steel teams, a lot of them running a sandslash, so you resist the claws there, right? So you can do okay in that, good in that matchup, and just overall it's a pretty safe Pokemon. And team number 8 has Kanto Shadow Ninetales, which again I've gone over 1 million times on this channel why I think Kanto Ninetales is great. In terms of this, like I said, there's always 1 to 2 waters on the team, so you really need to cover your water weakness. Quite honestly, I think I don't actually like their team in covering water weakness because you have quite a lot of weaknesses in general to water type Pokemon. Like, I mean, Altaria is probably your best answer on this team, but if you're against like a Quagsire or like Lantern, you've got a lot of weaknesses there. So I don't love that team build, but again, can never be mad when I see a Kanto Ninetales on a team. And as we go through the remaining, was there 8 on these? So 24. Again, sorry, they're tough to see, but it's basically the same thing. I'll just kind of, actually know what I'm going to do because it is actually tough for me to see too. I'm just going to really narrow this in and then move it up and down so I can see a bit better. First team, again, very meta, same cover, same idea. This one, so people can go a little off-brand, and this one I think is a little off-brand here. You still have sort of like your counter user, but this one's Vigoroth. You have your Sableye as your answer to Metachamp. You have your Altaria as your flyer. You have Lantern as your water. But they added in second Ghost in Marowak, and then Bastiodon. Again, just Bastiodon as a super wall to a flyer. Not a bad answer. Not the worst case scenario. This team, the only thing, I mean, Shadow Venusaur, I just talked about how strong I think Venusaur is now, and then Dunsparce. Dunsparce is sort of the core breaker for the Owl and Lantern, right? Having the Drill Run and Rock Slide combo there. Shadow Dragonair, I've kind of already talked about how sneaky strong it can be in neutral matchups. Like as long as you don't see a fairy, you're kind of neutral in everything. Meta team. So that's it of number 1. Number 2. Number 2, we have Meta Team. So you're starting to see more Venusaurs here, but Meta Team. We are not seeing anything unique here. There's the Ninetales again from Arrow. Toxapex. So there's your, again, it could fall under the water category, but It's a bulky poison, so it's a little somewhat unique. A9tails, this is the first A9tails we saw, which is interesting because A9tails was on everyone's team before. Not everyone's team, but it was on a lot of teams before. I just think that there's been a little increase in poison, but also as you're half ice typing, like it's a fairy, but with that half ice typing kind of makes like, unless you're running charm, like the Medicham matchup is actually not even a good matchup. So that's kind of why it's not being used as much. And then the last 8 teams here, normal meta team. Yep. Nothing new, and nothing new. And welcome to the problem of show 6, pick 3, and the problem of Great League right now. Like I said, 85% of the teams have Medicham, as you can see right on the screen now. All 4 of the teams have Medicham. Lickitungu's used as your bulky safe swap here. Sableye is also used. You have your Steel on every single one of the teams, right? G-Fisk, Registeel, G-Fisk, Registeel. You have your Flyer on all the teams. Altaria, Noctowl, Altaria. You have your Water on every team. Lantern. Ooh, no Water on this team. No Water on that second last team, but then we go Lantern, Swampert, double, and then Swampert again. So it's a very easy team build. And that is where this becomes very dependent on. So let's talk about 2 things. When everyone's team is the same, it truly comes down to how strong of a battler you are, right? Because it's a bit of luck, right? Because on alignment, because if everyone has, here's the thing though with these Pokemon. Let me just bring up the top ones, which I've moved around. So with these top ones here, let me make them a little bit bigger. In terms of sort of like hard punished, there's in these teams, why a lot of people choose these teams is because there's no, I mean, there are hard punishes. The hardest punish for Swampert is a grass type Pokemon, right? But you can cover those weaknesses with, like ItsAXN, your double grass weakness can be covered by the Owl, a Sandslash, and to a certain extent, like Medicham with Ice Punch, right? So you have answers there. But I was going to say, all these Pokemon, although there are hard counters, it's on this front page, you're not seeing something like Bastion, right? In my opinion, that's why Bastion can be strong, but it can just get like hard countered where you just like get a Swampert on it. Swampert will get to 1,000,000 energy, take you out, and then have multiple moves to throw, and you're kind of like screwed. As opposed to like Swampert against Registeel, sure, that's a good matchup for the Swampert, but Registeel can still land Focus Blast. It can still have Zap Cannon and like take you down to under 50%. And if you like either bait improperly or they call an Earthquake or something like that, you can like grab shields back and stuff like that. So it's not like just a completely hard punisher gonna win that like that matchup and then come out with answers. Same thing with like Sableye is a great answer for Medicham. If you've played that Sableye Medicham like I have before, in the Zero Shield, one foul play does not take out Medicham. Medicham can actually get to, especially with like one counter energy advantage, it can get to 2 Ice Punches and take Sableye to the yellow, almost red, right? So even though it's a hard counter, it's not a hard counter. So that's why a lot of these things you can mix and match and fight your way out of, as opposed to some GBLs, which you're just like completely hard countered. But again, when every single person has the same team, it does kind of showcase like, okay, thinking through, okay, what could they possibly have? How am I going to get out of this? What energy generation? It comes down to like the little things that a lot of these guys are super skilled on doing. Guys and girls, I should say, are skilled in doing. But in terms of the picks, the pick 6, show 6, pick 3. What I tried to do when I played the Toronto was I tried to just go counter meta. Here's your meta. Here, how would you try and counter this? So the problem is each team is built so that they always have answers to you, right? And this is why this balanced team is, let me actually see if I can just do this right now. Let me throw, I'm just trying to do this on the fly, but let me throw ItsAXN's team into PvPoke here and see what the recommended options to beat this team is, just to show you like how overall balanced it probably is. I'm guessing that Metachamp is going to be one of the, and why Metachamp is broken, and we'll see with the move updates. I think that Metachamp is one of the biggest answers to his team, quite honestly, because you have, you'll do well against the Lantern and the Swampert. You'll destroy the double weak to fighting Sandslash, and even though you're going to lose the Owl and the Sableye, you can still, like I said, take it pretty low. So I would not be surprised. I should have done this on Team Builder, but I will just put in the main meta. I'm going to bring it up on the screen in 1 second here. So give me a second here. Windows capture. Okay. And let's just make this a little bigger here. Oops. Okay, so right off the bat, so what you could do is you can put either some of the teams or like 10 teams into this list here and run it against the Great League meta to get you your answers. And right off the bat, Altaria, why you saw Altaria as the main flyer is that Altaria beats everything but Ace Sandslash, because obviously lit up by Ace Sandslash, but you actually beat every single other one there. So Altaria is a great answer to the main meta. For the most part, you're gonna, anything that has like 3 or 4 wins here is basically shows like average. And this is where, so if you want to find the counters to the main meta or the winning team, you need to look for a bunch of X's here, right? Because here are this is Lantern's wins and losses. The X's are losses, right? So you need to look for a few X's here. And this is why some people use Shadow Charizard, right? Because again, you're going to have problems against the water Pokemon, which every team has 1 or 2, but outside of that, you cover the fighters. Blast Burn is just such a nuke of a move that it does super, super strong. Crest at 3 and 3 here. Crest can be used as a safe swap. The problem with Crest is that you could, what this team, it has Ace Sandslash, has just Steel, so I guess it does have an answer too. Has the 1 Steel answer. Here is 4 losses. Diggersby. Diggersby is a really interesting one though, because here's the problem with Diggersby. You know 85% of the teams are running a Metachamp or counter user, and Metachamp has a dominant win here. And most teams are running, this is interesting that this has got to be bait dependent. Yeah, it is bait dependent. Let me see if you do not bait. Because I was like, how does Diggersby beat the 2 water Pokemon? The answer is it doesn't. It's very, very bait dependent. So I don't no. Diggersby, no. And this is where you need to use your common sense. Like, oh wow, that's a lot of X's. But you really, at Lantern, maybe because Spark is resisted, they can only go Surf. But no way you're beating Swampert there. So I do not like that. Dunsparce, and this is where the Dunsparce is not a bad answer. Again, because you can deal with the flyer. The Noctowl Lantern core, we know Dunsparce is a core breaker for that. We also know that as a normal typing, it resists the Sableye Claws. And most team are running Sableye as your answer to Metachamp or Ace Sandslash. So Dunsparce suddenly looks okay as a build for your team, as like a nice sort of safe answer overall. Lickitung, this is why a lot of people are running Lickitung. Even though you lose to Metachamp, it is not a bad loss. It is generally safe. The Owl as a normal typing flyer is one of your toughest ones. But outside of that, you do well in every sort of neutral matchup. Again, you resist Claws. Normal typing, resist Claws. Great there. Bulk, power up for your grass type Pokemon. Body Slam spam for everything else. So Lickitung would be one that I would seriously consider bringing as well for this meta. Mandibuzz is interesting. I don't think Mandibuzz is interesting because every single flying team has brought Altaria, which we saw has such a good record, or Noctowl, and we're going to get to Noctowl. Yeah, Noctowl has a good matchup here too. But Mandibuzz is interesting. I guess why people are... Well, I was going to say because you got a fairy weakness, but you also have the fairy weakness with Altaria. So Mandibuzz, that is Air/Mandibuzz too, instead of Snarl, which is interesting. So you're using it way more as a flyer. So yeah, you could substitute, I think, Noctowl or Altaria for Mandibuzz and still be okay. A9tails, if you're running Charm versus Powder Snow, that's why Powder Snow has some coverage here, but again, with all the steals, like the sandslash and stuff like that, it makes it very tough. And Lanterns, it makes it very tough to run A9, I think, now, compared to before. Registeel, okay, talk about broken, right? We know, actually I should move this a little up so you can see the names. We know that Registeel, obviously Fighters and Swampert are just such good matchups. But outside of that, just being able to Focus Blast or Zap Cannon and everything. We know Registeel's strong. That's why it's one of the steals that everyone uses. Maybe we're going to see a lock-on nerf next season. I don't know. Swampert, again, this is why I love Swampert, because outside of grass, the grass is your only weakness. I would 100% bring Swampert to a top 6. I think I did last time too. Because again, outside of grass, if there's a grass here, you would just get destroyed. But your sort of losses here, I shouldn't quote because these are losses, but like Medicham, Noctowl are losses, but they're not even bad losses. They're not like the 800s that you're seeing here. They're just like you lose, but it's not terrible. And then you win a lot of these other ones. So I think Swampert, why I would always bring it there, is a great Pokemon. Talonflame, interesting. Interesting. The problem with Talonflame is this right here, and why, in theory, Talonflame makes a lot of sense, right? Talonflame or Talonflame, I think what you add versus Charizard is you get that Incinerate, which just lights up your steals quicker. The problem is with Charizard, the wing attack is so fast and the blast burn hits so hard that even in bad matchups, you're still going to chip a ton. In bad matchups with Talonflame, you're just screwed. All right, you need to get to a Brave Bird against Swampert, and if they have a Lantern, you have absolutely nothing to throw. So that is why it is a little tougher to run Talonflame, and that's why other people would run Charizard first as opposed to that. And then we're getting to Umbreon, and Umbreon is a sneaky one here, and this is why a lot of people also kind of would bring Umbreon as opposed to Sableye. Because actually, where is Sableye here? Sableye, can I keep you both? No, I can't keep you both on the screen. But Sableye, between like Lantern, could just spam you with Surfs and take you out. Noctowl, obviously as the normal typing, will wall you there. Shadow Swampert just outpaces you to the moves. And can hit you. That requires an Earthquake, but it will take you out. Umbreon is one of those like super bulky Pokemon that is also spammy. And just, again, in these neutral conditions, like you resist the claws from Sandslash and Sandslash and Sableye. You're just going to outbulk basically Noctowl and Lantern and be able to spam them. Same with Swampert. And even Medicham, as a counter user, is going to beat you, but you're still going to get off a bunch of foul plays. So Umbreon as a tank is also a good idea. And this is when I talk about Venusaur. Like the problem with Venusaur is every team you know is going to have a Steel and a Flyer, right? So if the Steel is Registeel or G-Fisk, it's not bad. It's not bad because if you add Stunfisk here and you add Registeel here, you're going to beat the Stunfisk a little bit and you're going to lose to Registeel just by a little bit, right? So if that Steel was in place of a Sandslash, you're suddenly looking a lot better. The Flyer is going to be just your main weakness. Medicham, if you shield up, I already just went over this in my video, if you shield up a Psychic, it's actually not bad at all. It's when they bait you Ice Punch and then land a Psychic, you're going to lose the one. So Venusaur, again, could be a nice sneaky pick. And Vigoroth, this is why the other person probably used Vigoroth, is because Vigoroth will, as a counter user that is a normal typing, not have to worry about the flyers, but still gets that counter damage that is very, very strong. Obviously, it'll lose to Medicham and need to land a Bulldoze on a Sableye, but that's going to be very, very tough. So, but outside of that, counter body slam, very, very spammy. That's why Vigoroth, I actually use Vigoroth in my Toronto regionals because this was my thought process too. I don't want to use Medicham, but I want something that is strong and can deal with, at the time, Lantern and the Owl. And Vigoroth was that one. So that's why I used it. What I suffered from, besides going against two absolute beasts, was my team did not have bulk. I lacked bulk. I went with Vigoroth. I went with Shadow Swampert. I went with Shadow Ninetales. I went with Shadow Abomasnow. Like, I had a lot of hard-hitting Pokemon that were just very, very glassy. So I went up against Medicham a couple times. It was just like Medicham could tank a bunch of moves, and you were shielding and you were in trouble. And that's sort of where each of these teams is smartly built, right? Because you have, on every single one of these teams, you have at least 2, sometimes 3 bulky Pokemon mixed with sort of hard-hitting glacier Pokemon. So Swampert and a Sandslash are your sort of glacier or hard-hitting Pokemon. Sableye is kind of that in between as well, but Lantern, Noctowl, Medicham, all pretty tanky. Defense Deoxys, Registeel, Altaria, Umbreon, Azumarill, all tanky, right? So each of these teams, as you're going to see, has like 2 to 3 tanks on it, mixed with like 2 to 3 harder hitting Pokemon. Lantern, so this number 5 here, Lickitung, Medicham, Registeel, Altaria, all bulky. Swampert, Charizard as your glass cannons to spam and hit super, super hard, right? So that is the Show 6 Pick 3 format. That's the team building aspect of it. That is how I would go about building around teams as well. If I were gonna build right now, I can tell you what I'm gonna build right now because it won't matter in 2 weeks when they do the move update. I would for sure bring Swampert, a non-shadow, because I think the non-shadow has too many problems against like Lantern and stuff like that. I would rather just use the shadow has too many problems against Lantern and stuff like that. I'd rather use the non-shadow because you're going to lose to flyers anyways. I mean, you could beat Noctowl as a Shadow Swampert, but I would just prefer to use non-shadow. I would use Medicham at this point. I would use Sableye. Axon's first three outside of the shadow here. I would use Axion's first 3 for sure. You would need to use a flyer. I'm not sold what flyer I would use yet. Noctowl seems like the safest, although I don't hate Altaria. So I would use one of these 2 as my flyer, and then I would have to add a steel, right? You would have to add a steel. At this point, I think I would choose... It depends. Again, if I had to go right this second, I would choose G-Fisk. I really don't like using Registeel. I think a Sandslash is too glassy, and if 85% of the teams are going to have Medicham, I don't like that either. So I would rather just go G-Fisk because that is a more well-rounded Pokemon for this meta. So Swampert, Medicham, Sableye, Noctowl, G-Fisk, and I would need a 6th. I was about to say, would I just go something stupid like Togedemaru? It's not stupid. But you would just leave yourself very, very vulnerable to like Swampert because you would have like G-Fisk and Togedemaru, which would just get lit up by Swampert, and then like Sableye wouldn't have a good matchup. So I don't think I could realistically bring that. And what you may be asking, why can't I just bring Togedemaru as your steel instead of this? And it's because you would get lit up by other steels, right? So if I had Togedemaru in my place of my steel, then I would have a flyer and Togedemaru that would just get absolutely walled by G-Fisk. And so that would be Noctowl has not a bad matchup against that. That would be tough there. And then like the A Sandslash would be worse because they have drill run and just get to the drone so fast they'll be able to take you out. So then you'd have problems with like a sandslash there. So that is why I don't think I can build Tokudamru with the 5th there. As the steal, I think you'd have to use G-Fisk, and then your 6th I can just kind of look through and run some simulations and pick a 6th, maybe off brand or maybe just meta, who knows. That being said, we were promised a big move update. If they big move update it, great. I think they need to move update to take away some of Medichamp's strength. The fact that it is on 85% of teams here, and like I said, there is no real hard answer to Medichamp because it's just so bulky. It's spammy with counter. You get to psychic fast, which still hurt. You have ice coverage for flyers as a fighter. Like, it's really just truly a broken Pokemon right now. So I think they have to nerf it in some capacity. How? We'll see. I think they're going to nerf Registeel. I can see like a lock on or a Focus Blast Zap Cannon nerf coming. Most likely lock on. But again, you can very easily sub out Registeel and just put in another Steel. So that's less of an option. I think Medicham needs to go. You can do Defense Deoxys, but there is a big difference between Defense Deoxys and Medicham, in my opinion. But yeah, we will see what happens. Anyways, that is a long video to talk about the pick 6, show 3. Nope, show 6, pick 3. That is how you team build for these. Mixture of balance, bulk, and hard-hitting Pokemon. Coverage, basically all around. Like, again, what I actually did not explain is why this formula. I kind of just explained why water is everywhere, because it is generally the safest typing in this meta right now, because grass and electric are so limited. That is why water is such a safe typing. Medicham is just the best broken Pokemon in the game as a counter user. If you were going to have sort of water, like just a Swampert to Medicham, you need something for flyers, because flyers are going to be a problem. So you have a Steel. If everyone's going to run Medicham, you need a balanced team for that. So you need if you're going to be weak to fighter here and Medicham everywhere, you need a flyer. So that's why it's just a very, very easy formula to cover your weaknesses. Flyer covers your grass weakness. Flyer covers your fighting weakness. Your Sableye covers all the fighters that you're going to be weak to as well. Medichamp's just broken. So that is it. Anyways, let me know if you've played in these before, what you would build. Again, if we're expecting a move update in less than 2 weeks, there's no point of talking about teams you would build. I will discuss teams that I would build. I'll discuss the move. If we do get a move update, stay tuned for